Heals is OPAF, that's you. Alright, welcome to Uncapped. This is a series where I take people from the guild and talk to them about their spec. They're very, extremely skilled, very knowledgeable, and today we're talking to Oni, the Resto Druid. How you doing?
Hello. I'm good.
Real quick, Oni Tai is your oldest character, right?
Yes. This is actually my first character I ever made on WoW.
Really? And you've kept it this entire time?
Yep.
Wow.
Never changed servers, never race changed, never really made any changes except as expansions came.
You never even changed servers?
Nope.
Holy hell. Yeah, I can't imagine keeping a character around like that for so long.
Yeah, I just stubborn, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's nostalgia in it. And so, Oni's your very first and oldest character. How long have you had it? How long have you been playing?
Ever since the beginning of Burning Crusade.
Really? So right on release, basically?
Yeah. Been playing this character for a long time.
Mm-hmm. No kidding. And what made you? Has it always been a Guardian or a Resto Druid, or have you kind of? I know you dabble, but
No, actually, my friend got me into the game, and I was really against paying to play a video game because there's so many other free options out there.
Yeah.
And then my friend sold me balanced druids as essentially the laser chicken back as they were in Burning Crusade.
The laser chicken.
Yes. Moonfire was really overpowered back then, and you can just murder people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an instant cast. You did it on the run, and you were a walking tank, unkillable and everything. And so I picked it up, made my first character as a druid, tried PvP, and hated it. And then just kept playing. I took a liking to healing and went from there.
You just hated it. So your first foray into DPSing was in PvP?
Yeah, and not even structured PvP either. He was a big fan of world PvP and got me into that.
Oh no.
And that was how I learned how to play the game.
Oh no, that's the worst way to learn to play the game.
Yeah, and as it turns out, a lot of the things you do are dictated by chance and having a good system to play on, and my system back then was not.
Really?
So I suffered with a lot of lag, I suffered with a lot of issues, and I died very, very often in world PvP. And then, of course, rogues were overpowered and got ganked a lot, so...
Yeah. If you had to approximate, how many FPSs were you getting back then?
Ooh, somewhere in the teens.
The teens?
Maybe high teens. Yeah, like 15 to 20.
Oh my god, I remember those days.
If I ever got more than a second person on my screen at a time, that's how I was.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I can only imagine trying to world PvP with that.
It was definitely an experience.
So what, you tried Laser Chicken, you didn't like Laser Chicken, especially in world PvP. What made you then lean into Resto?
I just noticed that I kept glancing at my party's health bars, and the people who were keeping them alive, I wanted to help out as much as I could. And in a dungeon, DPS do this by avoiding circles and swirlies, but for the most part, they don't really do much to help the health bars. And when I learned that druids had a healing spec, I decided to give it a try, and I could still Moonfire while healing.
Oh, perfect. It's the best of both worlds.
They even had, back in Burning Crusade, they had a tree form that they could take. And
yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It was really simple. There was nothing complex about it, but I really enjoyed it and took off with it. And so I started to try and get into endgame raiding. I wasn't with any top guild or anything, but I really enjoyed raid healing and just kind of never looked back.
You are easily one of the best raid healers I know. We always talk about how this guild has insane healers, and you're, right there with them.
Well, thank you.
You pull the numbers that we need. And so Resto Druid, how it is right now, 9.05. How do you think it is right now? How's it situated?
I think it's fine. I think all the healers are in a perfectly fine spot, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot closer now than it has been in expansions past. it just kind of depends on what content you want to look for.
Right.
But I mean, I think Resto Druid's a lot of fun, and it brings a lot to the table that maybe not other specs can afford.
Like what? What do you mean?
I love the mobility of it. We have less powerful heals than a lot of the other specs, but we make up for it with higher mobility.
Mm-hmm.
More than half my kit I can cast while moving or as an instant cast. And it almost plays like a sort of a combo. You want all your moving pieces going at the same time, and when you can achieve that, you end up doing some really powerful things.
Definitely. I feel that. I know in my dabbling into Resto Druid, there's times where it feels like health bars aren't moving at all, and you're just like, hell yeah. You know, you set up your party with the right amount of hots, and everybody's taking the right amount of damage, and it's really satisfying.
Right.
Is that what kind of keeps you in it?
Yes. You just sometimes you can have it stacked where it almost looks like people aren't taking damage, you know.
Love that.
And you know that that's not the case because you can see the bars moving, but then they get replenished so quickly, and it's satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. I liked Resto a lot more the last time I tried it than I did in the past. I used to kind of be used to Discipline and Holy Priests, like big chunk healing. Like,
Right.
what the fuck? I'm pressing a button and not healing for 20k. What's going on? But yeah, now I'm really starting to appreciate it. And I'm glad you found that playstyle that you were really looking for.
Definitely.
It might not be laser chicken, but it's chicken adjacent.
Chicken adjacent. I love that.
Yeah. But if you had to pick something about Resto, it's like little quality of life thing, maybe a tiny buff. Like, what would you say? What would you want changed?
I would I would love it if our two dots had similar durations to each other. We have Sunfire and Moonfire, and I know like dealing damage isn't what a healer signs up to do, but it's what is asked of you in dungeons at this point. But I wish that when I applied my Moonfire and my Sunfire that I could reapply them at the same time. Currently, one lasts almost twice as long as the other.
Yeah, yep, that's right.
Other than that,
so should they make Sunfire shorter or Moonfire longer?
Well, it's actually the opposite. I wish that they would make Sunfire last a little longer.
Oh, it's the other way around. Okay. That's funny that you're like, Resto's great, but the one thing I want changed is how we do damage.
Well, I guess thinking about that a little bit more, one thing that they've done is that they've incorporated, just with the class in general, specific situations where you might want to use your other forms.
Really?
And I found that to be a lot of fun. Yeah, you have Stampeding Roar, which puts you in your cat or your bear form, and it gives the whole party a speed boost. Or if you know that you're about to take a big attack, you want to go to your bear form as a way to mitigate damage.
Right. Yeah, I didn't really think about that.
And it's really nice because certain abilities will put you in the form that's relevant to them. I kind of wish that they baked it into all of them. For example, if I wanted to claw or rake, it would tell me that I need to be in cat form to do that. But if I wanted to hit my Stampeding Roar, it would just put me in the form and then apply it.
I see. So some of them will auto swap you, some won't.
Correct.
Right. Okay. That sounds frustrating trying to keep track of what does what.
Yeah. The when your action bars change based on certain forms you're in, it takes a little bit of setup. But I made sure to spend a few afternoons where it was fluid. I could press my cat form button, and I already knew what button was my claw or my ferocious bite or what have you. Or I already know what button is my bear form, and then I can activate Iron Fur.
Right. That's the one thing on Druid I'm still not used to. It's like, you've got your relevant forms keybound, and then those forms have their own action bars, and just my brain confuses all the buttons. It can't keep track of all the buttons.
It's definitely something that plays towards experience, and if you get a little bit comfortable with it, you'd notice like a lot of benefit out of that.
Definitely. Once you swapped to Resto back in BC, you started getting into endgame. and you mentioned raiding. Now that, I know Mythic's been around for a while now, but what would you consider yourself more of a raider or more of a Mythic Plus player?
I think at this point, I definitely enjoy Mythic Plus a lot more. I love raiding, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But there does come a certain anxiety when playing a healing spec with maybe like a lower output of healing on a lot of my spells. A lot of them require having more spells on the target to help ramp up the healing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see 3 or 4 people taking half of their health as damaged, and all I can do is rejuvenate them, sometimes they're just like
Yeah,
kind of frantic casting, and you just like panic and are just trying to regrowth and heal everybody up at the cost of like a lot of mana efficiency.
right.
Whereas in Mythic Plus, there's only you. I know that there's less people to heal, but there's also less healers, so it's all on me to keep everybody up,
Mm.
and I'm comfortable with that.
It's funny. I'm the raid lead, but even still, I perform better in Mythic Pluses.
Right. There's
Uh,
often less things going on in a Mythic Plus too. Raid bosses can sometimes have 10 to 15 mechanics, looking at you,
mm-hmm.
Sire Denathrius. But most of these boss fights here have 3 mechanics, maybe 4 if you're on the final boss.
Yeah, right. Oh my god, you talk about bosses with a lot of mechanics. Doing callouts for Stone Legion generals feels like being the captain of a ship in a storm. Do this, do that, get over there. Someone needs to. You're just like every half second there's something you need to tell someone to do.
Oh yeah. I remember in Legion there was a boss that had a very similar situation, and he would move from one platform to another and then back. And a lot of his mechanics were very different in how you handled them, but
Mm,
looked very different on your screen. Or I'm sorry,
right.
they looked very similar on your
Oh,
screen.
uh,
And so sometimes you would, call out the wrong thing, and that could cause an issue.
been there, done that.
But thankfully, Blizzard has kind of like perfected the whole appearance of things, and they made sure like soak mechanics all look similar, whereas avoidance mechanics look similar to each other.
They're
And I'm
definitely,
I'm very
yeah.
thankful for that.
Yeah, they're definitely getting a lot more consistent with stuff like that. I still think Final Fantasy probably does that the best of any MMO I've played because they're literal indicators of what to do.
Oh
Like,
right.
they're not flavored to the boss at all. They're just straight up like, "Hey, go here." Um, but it's a stylistic choice, I think.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Do you know what kind of stuff they're changing on Resto Druid in 9.1?
I've followed it and read up with a little bit of it. It doesn't seem like a whole lot is changing, to be honest,
Really? Okay.
but little things.
Yeah. Anything notable that you're kind of like either excited for or dreading?
There's some things I'm excited for. There's a new legendary. So all the classes and specs are getting new legendaries based on the covenants, and there's one for my Night Fae that I'm pretty excited to try out. I might give it a shot.
What's it do?
It's so I'm the Night Fae, and it says that my convoke of the spirits
Hmm.
has half the cooldown, but casts half the spells.
Okay.
Uh, and I just naturally am a bigger fan of that idea. I play other classes and alts that they have a 4-minute cooldown for like a 40-second duration buff, and I would be happy if it was a 20-minute or 2-minute cooldown
For a
with a
20
20
second buff.
second.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would just be happier in general with that kind of exchange.
Hmm.
But also in the Covenant, there's this talent tree that you can go down that says when you apply your Convoke of the Spirits, you get a stacking buff. Well, if you can have that stacking buff happen more often, it's actually just much more impactful than just having the Convoke the Spirits happen more often.
Right. Yeah. So you're getting more buffs out of your convoke and you're also convoking more often. And I feel like convoking more often feels almost more useful as a healer because it's a healing cooldown. And if it's up twice as often, like you don't have to be so hesitant to press it.
Exactly.
You're like, oh no, we're getting stomped. Do I press it now or are we gonna get stomped harder later? Like because for healers, their cooldowns are everything. Like everything,
Exactly.
especially in raid. But even in M plus, if you know some routes, you can almost think like, okay, I'm gonna need to trank here, I'm gonna need to spirit link there, whatever you're playing.
Yeah.
So having convoke up more often should be, pretty decent.
Right. And it's pretty nice because you in raids you tend to line up your cooldowns on certain mechanics sometimes, even because you know that perhaps the raid wouldn't survive without some kind of healing cooldown going.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to have that more often, like having convoke for every pillar of Sledge Fist, for example,
That'd be
is
huge.
yeah, that's
That
really
would be
powerful.
huge.
And then in Mythics, I like to often use Convoke as a DPS cooldown. You can take a talent called Heart of the Wild, which lets your affinity spec do more, essentially.
Yeah.
And so you go to Cat Form, Heart of the Wild, and Convoke, or you go Moonkin if you spec into that,
Mm-hmm.
Cat Form, Convoke. And it just applies a lot of damage in a very short burst window. And it can be
Nice.
pretty powerful to cheese through certain boss phases.
I always appreciate when I see a druid convoke on the very last phase of the fairy boss in Miss. So you try to skip the 10% hide and seek or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's where.
That's one of
Hmm?
that's one of my favorite things is being able to skip key phases like that. Skip
Yes.
that last 10% of Mistcaller, or in Necrotic Wake when you get the what is his name's like Surgeon Ickis or something,
Dr. Ickis, or yeah,
Doctor
yeah, yeah.
Ickis. When you get to skip him jumping back up on his pedestal and you don't have to hook him a second time when you can do him in one phase. Big
Right.
fan of skips of that nature.
Nothing is as satisfying as one phasing Stitch Flash.
Sage Flesh, yes.
Yeah, Ickis is the Plaguefall dude, but yeah, one phasing Stitch Flash. I'll commit all of the party's weapons. All the spears you pick up. I'll throw all the spears to do it. Like
Right.
I don't care if we have one for the dragon. I don't care if we have one for the last boss. Just phase it.
Absolutely. When I play as an alt that has a heroism or a bloodlust ability, often I'll use it there. Even if you wanted to save it for the final bosses, some pugs might just no. I want to get this guy down in one phase. I don't want to wait another minute for him to get off that pedestal.
Mm-hmm. And then you kill the A bomb, so you have to wait for another A bomb to spawn. It's yeah. So you're thinking you might. It's funny because last week I was talking to Rhett and he was talking about how all the priest covenant Legos were trash, and you're thinking you might actually end up taking one of them.
It's hard pressed to pick that one over a legendary I'm currently using.
Uh huh.
But it's enough to pique my interest. Make
Definitely.
me think twice about it. And if the rumor going around that we might get to wear two legendaries comes true, I definitely would consider using it.
Absolutely. For sure. If you had to give one piece of advice to every new or continuing Resto Druid out there, what would it be?
Don't care so much about your stats. One of the nicest things about our spec in class is that we essentially all the stats are good for us. Of course, some are better than others, but the way that one is better or worse than another is so minuscule that honestly you should just chase item level. And then once you get, to your peak item level, like 220 and above, then you can care more about wanting your mastery over your crit or whatever. But
Right. So it's all main stat. Just give me the int.
yes, int is so valuable. All of our sets are good. A lot of specs and classes out there have a stat that they just don't care about, or a stat that is just not good for them. Resto Druids is very convenient that we don't have that kind of stat. Some aren't as great. Like Mastery is my top stat, and Verse is not as great for me. But honestly, if a piece had high Verse and no Mastery, but it's an upgrade item level wise, I would still take it. Very,
Definitely.
very, very rarely would I try and weigh the stats as some other classes really need to do.
And some classes are so either they're made or broken by their secondary stats.
Oh, absolutely. Frost Mage needs to hit a very specific percent of crit. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
Fire Mage wants as much crit as the game will give them. Some classes, you can tell the two people apart when one's not stacking their stats properly and the other one is, and it's
You
very
really can.
obvious.
You can. Yeah. And it's crazy how much of a difference it can make. So playing a class that doesn't really care, that's kind of nice.
It's very nice, absolutely.
For sure. Well, thanks for coming along, talking about Resto Druid.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And if anybody comes in the comments with like questions or anything, can I holler at you and get some answers?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. If there's any way I can help somebody, if they had a question or wanted to learn more, I'd be happy to help.
Absolutely. And I forget, are you our Resto Druid class captain?
Yes, I sure am.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks so much for chatting, and we'll definitely have you back on talking about, maybe one of your alts or a different druid spec, something.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
For sure.